welcome back to my channel. I am the Woodland Witch, and in today's video we are going to be doing an introduction to foraging. Foraging is essentially the act of going out and gathering natural materials from a specific environment to utilize for a specific purpose. The purpose of foraging can vary anywhere from a medicinal purpose to crafting a specific tool. We weren't always able to go into a store and grab what we need, so foraging was at one point a key to survival. It was a way to find food, to build shelter, to craft clothing, and things that we need in our everyday life. Nowadays, it's not necessarily essential, but it is something that is beneficial, especially if you are an herbal crafter like me. You will find that herbalism and foraging tend to go hand in hand. A lot of herbalists and herbal crafters grow their own things, or they just utilize what they find in their area. So I will be giving you some tips on how to do that in this video. So the first thing we're going to talk about when foraging is safety. Depending on where you're foraging, I highly recommend going with somebody, especially if you're in the woods or in the middle of nowhere. It's always important to use the buddy system or make sure that somebody knows where you are. Another safety tip, do not put anything in your mouth that you are unsure of. Properly identifying anything you're ingesting is probably one of the most important rules when it comes to foraging. That can make foraging a little intimidating and a little scary, but I can assure you if you are taking the time to research and properly identify anything that you are ingesting, learning non-edible lookalikes, you will be just fine. And with that being said, when I started foraging, I didn't really ingest anything that I was grabbing. And there's a couple reasons for that I'll get into, but with me also being a witch, when it comes to foraging, I do utilize that in my magical practice as well. So for quite some time, I was just strictly using the things that I was foraging in my personal magical practice. Only recently am I getting really comfortable with ingesting certain things that I have foraged. I have foraged dandelions every spring for the last 3 years. And this is the first year that I was willing to ingest the ones that I foraged. And that's just a precautionary thing for me. I really like to get to know a plant and identify it 100% without any single doubt in my mind that what I am ingesting is what I think it is. Another thing to consider when foraging is your location. I highly recommend, as a beginner forager, you pick one area to start with. For me, when I started foraging, I lived on 2 acres in North Carolina. I took time to get to know what was growing there. I had raspberries and blackberries, red clover, purple dead nettle. So I took time to learn this one specific area and this one local place. And it really helped me gain confidence when it came to identifying things. I found myself being able to expand outside of that area and being like, oh, that's purple dead nettle, or that's mullein. I know what that is. So I think consolidating it to one specific area when you're really practicing and really getting to know it is super beneficial. You can forage pretty much anywhere. I live in a suburb now in a major city in New Hampshire, and it's much different than living on 2 acres in North Carolina. But with that being said, I have found so many more plant allies in this area that I am now so confident and comfortable identifying. There's a loop that I walk every single day. It's probably about 2 miles, and honestly, every single time I walk that loop, I find something different. As I said earlier, foraging can be a little intimidating, especially when you're expanding your area too largely. Start small, you will thank me in the long run. It may seem repetitive and it may seem tedious, but I promise you, going into the same area over and over and over again, even if you're identifying the same things over and over and over again, you are creating this natural tendency in yourself to be able to look at something and be like, I know what that is. Gaining that confidence of knowing exactly what it is that you're looking at, you can go into larger areas or different spaces and be able to identify it there as well. Just in this loop that I walk every day, I have found mugwort, yarrow, rowan, red clover, violets, dandelions, pineapple weed, just so many things. And that was just in a 2-mile radius. So pick an area, get to know it really well, and you're probably going to find a lot of things that you didn't know were there. And be aware of where this location may be, especially if you're foraging in like a state park or a local park. Different states and cities have rules depending on where you are. In some state parks, it's illegal to touch anything or take anything at all. And when it comes to local parks, you really never know whether or not it's being sprayed with anything. You want to kind of steer clear of anything that's been sprayed of pesticides, especially if you're going to be ingesting it anywhere there's a lot of traffic on the side of the road. That tends to get a lot of runoff and can get, oil leakage and just different nasty things that you don't want to ingest. Okay, so you've picked an area that you want to get to know and you want to begin foraging in. How do we start identifying? There's a couple of different things that you can do. I recommend doing all of them. And the first thing is going to be grabbing books for your specific area. For instance, I live in the Northeast in New England. This is Mushrooms of the Northeast. I also have Northeast Medicinal Plants. These books are really great because they can help you identify things that are specific to whatever region or area that you are in. That also takes down some of the intimidation a little bit because every area is going to have something different. And that's not to say you shouldn't educate yourself or research on other things that may not be local to your area. But when you're just getting into foraging, drawing in that scope a little bit and kind of focusing on little spaces at a time is really helpful. As I said, these books are specific to my specific area, so everywhere in New England, even up into northeastern Canada. And there's very detailed pictures in here. Pictures are really important. Colored pictures specifically. I recently bought a foraging book for mushrooms and there was no colored pictures in it, and I was like, what am I supposed to do here? So colored pictures, and honestly, the more pictures, the better. That just helps give you really solid evidence to whatever it is that you're foraging. There's a lot of plants that look like each other. Some of them are non-edible, and you don't want to be caught in a position where you're grabbing something that is not able to be ingested or is going to be maybe harmful to the skin. Also, a lot of plants have different variations. So you may be identifying the same plant multiple times, but it's going to be a different color or a different height or shape. You see that with lilacs. You'll see lilacs in a variety of different colors, violets as well. And you even have chamomile and pineapple weed that look almost identical, but they're really just cousins. So as I said, the more pictures, the better. Books specific to your region, and carry them with you when you're going out. Carry these books with you. If you see something, look it up in your book. Eventually, you're not going to have to do that every time, but I think in the beginning, it's really, really helpful to help identify key points and certain identifiers. So when you just begin foraging, I recommend carrying these books with you. In the moment, you can go and check and see exactly what you're looking at. It'll give you information right on the spot for whatever it is that you're looking at. There's also a lot of plant identifying apps that you can use. I personally use Picture This. Picture This, I think, is $20 a year, maybe, but I really like how thorough it is because I am a witch as well, and I do utilize these things in my magical practice. Picture This identifies the specific plant, it gives you interactions, it gives you magical properties and symbolism. If there's any sort of precautionary thing you need to be aware of, it will let you know that as well. You can identify like 1 million plus plants on Picture This, and it's 98% accurate, I want to say. And that app has been one of my go-tos when it comes to foraging. I've tried a few other apps, but Picture This has just been the top one so far. I also suggest looking at your local area if there's any foraging courses. I know they had this when I lived in North Carolina. There was foraging courses in groups that would go out every single weekend, and they would just identify things together and help each other learn and grow when it comes to identifying things out in the wild. So if you have access to a resource like that, utilize it. Always good to get a second opinion, even if you just know somebody and you text them a picture and you're like, hey, do you know anything about this specific plant? I'm also going to link a few of my favorite foragers and creators down below so you can learn from them as well. I have learned so much from them and chatted with them back and forth about different, recipes, how to utilize a specific plant. So a second set of eyes, second opinions are always great. So in foraging, you don't really need a lot of tools outside of whatever it is you're using to identify, but I will say there are a couple things that I would have on hand every time you're going out. Number one is a set of gloves. Take gloves with you. There are certain plants, stinging nettle is one of them, rue, cutting rue, it will burn the skin. So make sure that you're foraging with gloves on and properly handling anything that you're taking. I would also invest in a basket. I used to just forage and put things in jars, but I have found that it creates a lot of moisture in the jar and it kind of makes things wilt a lot quicker. So get a basket, something that's open, something that allows air to flow. And lastly, a small pair of clippers. I use these clippers to cut a specific area of the plant so that it will continue to grow. We are not the only species that benefit from local flora, so I always try to leave a little bit as well. There's certain animal species that depend on these wild berries and this local flora, so I always want to make sure they have as much as they need as well. With that being said, I always try to harvest ethically and resourcefully. Look into whatever plant that you're identifying. As I said before, there are different rules for different areas of foraging, but there are also different rules for specific plants. Some plants are endangered and illegal to harvest in a specific area, or if they are harvested in the wrong way, it can actually kill the plant that you're harvesting. And that is our introduction to foraging video. I hope that you all enjoyed and that this answered some questions. I know these are common questions I get all the time. There will be another video where I will take you foraging with me and I can show you how I do these things hands-on. Hope you all enjoyed this video and I will see you in the next one.